started with the festivities today and all these pontifications, and I figured out what the hell it is I'm going to say. Mr. Michael of the library here, they've got a couple of special announcements they want to pass along. So, Michael, take it away.
Welcome everybody to the library. We appreciate you all coming to the program today. It's great having you. Carol Elliott here. We'd like to talk about our summer reading program just briefly.
I just want to remind you to get your little summer reading thing stamped. And if you haven't signed up for summer reading, I can get you afterwards and sign you up. This takes care of 1/6 of it, or 1/7 of it. But I'll be back here at the table when it's over to stamp your paper. Thank you.
And whenever you're ready.
Preceding paid for by Michael Green. Well, ladies and gentlemen, permit me to introduce you to a man whose great learning and veneration for truth is exceeded only by his high and mild captain. You didn't buy that at all, did you? Mr. Mark Twain. Well, I find these introductions troublesome and unnecessary, but if they must be done, I prefer to do the job myself so as to get in all the facts. I was born modest, not all over, but in spots. I remember one time this gentleman was introduced me in this mining town of Red Dog. And he said, I only know two things about this here feller Mark Twain. One, he's never been in the penitentiary. Two, I don't know why. Compliments, we all love compliments. You know, it's, the newspaper has a good idea, believe it or not. Newspaper says if you can't find someone to pay you a compliment, pay yourself one. I'll do that right now. Rudyard Kipling and I encompass all knowledge. Between Kipling and myself, we know all that can be known. Kipling knows everything and I know the rest. Compliments, we do love them. I remember I was, of course I don't really remember being born, but you know, the thing about we rejoice at a birth and we grieve at a funeral, and I just think it's because we're not the principal in either case. Oh, this is an educated crowd. You gotta watch this crowd. But I came in on Halley's Comet in the year of our Lord 1835, and I left. I always told people I was going to leave when Halley came back, and I did in the year 1910. And in between, I had some most wondrous adventures. Made a fortune and lost it. Made a fortune and lost it. Made a fortune, lost it, you know. They always say, don't put all your eggs in one basket. I say put all your eggs in one basket and then watch that basket. But that didn't work in New Haven, Bloomfield either, so we'll
Scratch out.
Future shows. I was born in Florida, Missouri. Raised in a little river town called Hannibal. And I had a most wondrous life, just writing what I know. All I did, just write what I know. Made a fortune. I was famous for being famous. First man ever to do that. I was what you have probably done away with in your civilized 21st century. I'm going to let you know a new word today because I'm sure you've done away with it. I was a celebrity. Newspaper people and magazine people, they would follow me around everywhere I went just to write down the things I said and take my picture just to sell newspapers and magazines. I'm sure they got something better to do nowadays. I got a few penny laughs with this now. But I was being honored in my home state of Missouri in a little river town called St. Louis. I hope it's still there. They were finagling with some newfangled sport called baseball. I'm sure it never caught on, especially in St. Louis. And if there ain't Dodger fans here, they know we caught on in St. Louis. I understand this Kershaw feller's throwing tonight, so it's all good. So. But at any rate, I digress. I'm not ready to talk about politics yet, the ultimate digression. But I was going to be honored for a lifetime of achievement. They were going to unveil a bronze bust to me at this St. Louis museum. So I thought, least I can do is show up. And I was good at doing the least I could do. You laughed a little bit too hard. I bet you're thinking of your brother, aren't you? Okay, anyway, they were going to unveil this big bronze bust to me, so I shows up, and I'm pontificating on things of the mind and the spirit, and this young lady comes up to me. Now, let me see if I can put this in 21st century terms. She was a healthy young lady. And she comes up to me and she says, Mr. Clements, I come 100 miles just to see your bust unveiled. Well, I thanked her for her effort and told her, should the situation ever arise, I hope to return the favor. That's as bawdy as we got in the 19th century, I'll tell you. I'll tell you a little bit about my props. I like to dress all in white because it just confounded the holier-than-thous to see a man of my countenance in angelic colors. And I wear a little of the other. Give some props to old Satan. Now, pity the poor boy. There's only one of him. The opposition has millions of followers. See, religious jokes just don't go over real well in this 21st century. Did you hear that cricket chirp over there? I will, if at all possible, get you to laugh at one bit of religious humor before the day is over. That wasn't it. But I like to dress all in white. I like to smoke a good cigar and light it. What's that, Libby? My wife, Olivia, keeps me on the straight and narrow just like all women did. You ever read my literature, you see that women come out very smart, very strong, and always a little bit better than men. And I see that ain't changed in the 21st century. What's that, Lynn? I can't light it. Illegal? That must be a government thing. Because I guarantee you one thing, no civilized society would ever vote that in. Got to tell that joke in North Carolina right after they voted it in. Got a nice laugh. Well, hell, you're not going to let me smoke. Let me have a beverage. Becky Thatcher? Miss Becky Thatcher, would you come up here with my beverage? Need my beverage here, Miss Becky. Give Miss Becky a hand here. Hey. What you got for me?
Tea.
My tea. Uh-huh. Well, how's that rapscallion Tom Sawyer doing these days?
He's a boy. What good can he do?
Early feminist. Well, I have a little compromise. Not going to let me smoke. I'm going to go ahead and drink because I was a man of compromise. And it started when I was about 12 years old, when my dear sweet mother caught me drinking, smoking, and cursing. Now, I'm sure none of your 12-year-olds today would ever drink, smoke, or curse. You know, when I perform for college students, they all laugh at that particular thing for some reason. But my dear sweet mama wanted me to refrain. So I made a compromise with her at the age of 12 that 167, you're the brilliant math man, is that right? 167, 12, 179, is that the way that works?
Exactly.
Oh, damn, I got it right. So I made a promise to her that I have kept for 167 years. That I would refrain from drinking, smoking, and cursing half the time. And I have. I have never drank, smoked, or cursed when I was asleep. And never refrained when I was awake. It didn't explode. This is a contribution to the Freddie Booker No Retirement Fund into a Heaven Hill glass.
Oh,
See,
dear.
I'm trying to cover as much bourbon industry as I possibly can. I always do my first toast. Come on in, we're having a good time. Much earlier today. That's good, good, thank you. Thank you for coming again. Almost gluttons for punishment, come twice, aren't you? But my first toast is always to that Johnson feller's home state, the great Commonwealth of Kentucky, land of fast women and beautiful horses. Yeah, I said that right. Because when the world comes to an end, I want to be in Kentucky. Everything happens 20 years later there. Oh, that's Booker did a good job on that, yeah. Have some other props I want to tell you about. Look at that handsome son of a bitch right there. Okay, anyway, this is a book given to that Johnson feller by one of his former students who bought the whole Mark Twain collection for him on something called eBay, something. And this was published in 1904. This old one made the trip. The whole collection back there. He even gave me one from 1869. I published myself. Tramp Abroad, so that's pretty exciting. Have a watch here. That was Pop Bowling from historic New Haven, Kentucky. I performed yesterday. This is about 1904, and it's right twice a day. That's right. Hey, you see these decanters? Neither one of them have a head on them. This one shattered during their performance. Just picked it up, it dropped, shattered into a million pieces. And they laughed. It wasn't a joke. And this one, by the way, was given to that Johnson feller by Booker No. And then it got replaced on something called eBay, whatever it is. But he still loses his head, and for some reason, there's no bourbon in either one of those. I don't know what the hell happened to that. I think Bobby Ballard did it myself, but that's okay. Those are some of the little trinkets that I have. You see some books. I had my autobiography first volume. I had a lot to say. This is the first of 5 volumes that I demanded not to be published for 100 years after my death. Because I named some names, and I wanted them to be long gone before the truth came out. And a lady in New Haven told me she had read it, cover to cover. I told her, bless your soul. But at any rate, it went to something, they actually didn't publish it for 100 years. Came out in 2010, went straight to something called the New York Times bestseller list. And just published the second volume this past year, and it's on something called the New York Times bestseller list. And the Honorable Michael tells me you have both volumes available.
Here at the main library.
Right now in the main library. This one ain't available. So I have some of his books, some of my books and everything, so it's all good. What is it? I got a little irritated. Person told me they had a book they wanted to give me that had all of my funny lines down through the years. You see how small that book is? Let's see what we got. It is by the goodness of God that in our country we have those 3 unspeakably precious things. Freedom of speech, freedom of conscience, and the prudence never to practice either one of them. All right, the next I'm still finishing my introduction. I think think the best introduction I ever got was from this guy named Tommy Edison. He came up with something like 300 different ways not to make a light bulb. And he said a man gives his love first to his family. And if he has any love left over, he generally selects Mark Twain. Kind of nice old Tom. And he did come up to me once and asked me if he could shoot me. I told him to stand in line. But we're going to play later on in the show. The finale has the only known video footage of me, shot by Thomas Edison, figuring he was fooling with something called a video scope. And I don't think it'd ever catch on. But he said he wouldn't shoot me because I was the only son of a bitch everybody recognized. Yeah. All right, next part though is I want to talk to you a little bit about my century, the 19th, and compare it to your civilized 21st century. And you see if we have changed. So we'll start first with humanity. In my day, there were two types of people. The damned and the ought to be damned. Got a lot of chuckles with that, like it ain't changed a whole lot. Man was the most greedy creature. He'd lie when the truth was better. For me, I said always tell the truth. That way you don't have to have a memory. But I digress. We're almost to politics now, the ultimate digression. I'm sure you figured that out. Civilized 21st century. But, yeah, humanity, sometimes when I look upon humanity in my day, I wish Noah and his followers had missed the boat. See, there's another. I knew that one wasn't going to get it. You see that cricket? Cricket's all chirping over there again. That wasn't the one. Wasn't the one. But nature was so noble. And man was so unkind. Man was the only animal that was cruel. Only animal that inflicts pain for pleasure. Man was the only animal that blushes, or needs to. When I think about it, if you want to know the difference between a dog and a man, here it is. You take a dog in and make him prosperous, he will not bite you. And that's the principal difference between a dog and a man. Well, that's what you got to think about for just a moment, isn't it? Yeah. Now, a cat, you know how cats are. I love cats. I had plenty of cats in all my residences. Mainly because you didn't have to do a damn thing to keep a cat entertained. But I like to compare a cat with a lie. See, the difference between a cat and a lie is a cat only has 9 lives. So tell the truth. It will astonish people. Harry Truman had that aphorism on his desk. It was a Mark Twain quote. So. And then there's education. I always said, don't let your schooling interfere with your education. I believe God only created man because he was disappointed in the monkey. And then he created idiots. And that was for practice. And he created school boards. Last time I did that joke here, there were 2 school board members here. And they both laughed. Which tells you everything you need to know. At any rate, that's my education. And then there's the newspapers. And I really like, I worked for newspapers for a number of years. Published my first story in the newspaper, Jumping Frog. But I do believe in this aphorism. A person who does not read the newspaper is uninformed. Person who reads it's misinformed. But I'm sure that's changed in the civilized Kentucky Standard 21st century. And now for the ultimate digression of man called politics. In my day, believe it or not, we made fun of our politicians. I'm sure that Stewart feller and that Colbert feller and that O'Reilly feller have better things to do than make fun of politicians. But they were not merely food for laughter in my day. They were an entire banquet table. And these reporters, they'd ask me, they said, well, can you define a senator? I said, I can. A senator is a man what lives in Washington and makes laws when he's not doing time. This is where I'm supposed to throw that McConnell joke in here. Anyway. But I tell you, this one reporter, he just kept at me. He says, I'm not leaving here until you say something noble about him. At least compare him to some noble creature. I said, I can do that. It's a jackass. Now you think about it. A jackass is a most noble creature because he is a jackass. Now, as a politician, a most noble creature because he is a jackass. Thank you for the pity laugh there. That's more we got in New Haven yesterday, wasn't it, on that? I think it hit too close to home. That's maybe, I don't know. But I always believed that if you had less statesmanship, you'd need fewer battleships. We once had a president declare war on a small country in the middle of nowhere just to get votes. They asked me about it. I said, I had nothing against the Philippines. I have no idea why we're going to war there. I have no idea. But then this reporter kept after me. He said, I'm not leaving till you say something good about a congressman. I said, okay, one died last week. True story. Now, I wasn't able to attend the funeral, but I sent a letter of approval. And here's a little ditty that seems to go over well in the sunshine state of Florida for some reason. And I don't know why they seem to chuckle at this, but you know, we'd have presidential elections and wouldn't know who won for a couple of weeks. We couldn't count votes. Vote early, vote often, because nobody knew how to count the damn things anyway. And I tell you, it got so bad. In the election where Ulysses S. Grant won, my friend James Whitcomb Riley voted for him 11 times. Of course, the fact that he'd been dead 6 years when the election was held makes it a most remarkable feat. But I digress, and that's about all about that I want to say. You know, I was doing this pontification at a school up in the Northeast. I'm sure it's not there anymore. It was called Princeton. It was doing pretty well, and then that Tim Ballard feller graduated from it. I don't think it's been any good since. Had to get one in. But I was accused of being a literary thief at Princeton by this snooty English professor. Are there any other cons? You know, Johnson students laugh a lot about that particular joke. And this Professor Van Dyke, which wasn't how I pronounced it. Oh, we still have that word in the 21st century. Professor Van Dyke, this snooty English professor, comes up to me and goes, Mr. Clemens, how old is the celebrated jumping frog of Calaveras County? You know how the people speak. I said, well, it's 30, 40 years old. I published it. It was a story told to me by Hopkins Good Smith. I published it in the newspaper, so it has to be true. He says, you, sir, are a liar and a thief. Well, I didn't like being called a thief. So I asked him to prove it, and now I have this great educated audience, this great Nelson County audience today, that can serve as my judge and jury as to whether I stole this from the ancient Greeks. Now, I will tell you, when I tell that story in historic Tarpon Springs, home of the Greek sponge divers and the sponge docks, they suddenly perk up They think somebody took $1 out of their pocket. They want to know why. But I'm going to play for you a little kids-approved Lego version of the celebrated jumping frog of Calaveras County. And then I'm going to read you the short paragraph that Professor Van Dyke said I stole it from, called The Athenian and the Frog. And you tell me if there's any correlation whatsoever. So we will turn it over to our technological guru, Mr. Michael, to turn on our little Lego video here.
Pull up a chair and I'll tell you more about that fella Jim Smiley that I was telling you about last time. Let's see. It was in the winter of 49, or maybe it was in the spring of 50. I don't recollect exactly. But anyways, that there Jim Smiley was the curiousest fella you ever done see. Always betting on anyone and anything. He bet on a horse race, a dog fight, a cat fight, a chicken fight. Why, if there was two birds sitting on a fence, he'll bet you which one would move first. It made no difference to him. While one time even, when the parson's wife was ailing,
Good day, ma'am. How's the parson's wife doing today?
She's considerably better, thank the Lord for his infinite mercy. With the blessing of Providence, she'll get well yet.
You think so, eh? Well, I'll risk 2.5 that you don't.
Oh,
things went on that way until one day Smiley chanced to catch a frog.
I'm a calculated to eradicate you, and I'm a learning to be the best dang jumper in this here county. Ain't that right, Daniel Webster? That's what I'll call ya. Daniel Webster.
And so Smiley began to train Daniel in the fine art of jumping. Smiley said all a frog wanted was an education, and he could do most anything, and I believe it. Daniel could get over more ground at one straddle than any animal of his breed you ever see. Smiley was monstrous proud of his frog, and well he might be, for he could outjump any frog and made Smiley a heap of money. One day, a feller, a stranger in the camp, came across Smiley. What might it be that you got in that there box?
It might be a parrot, or it might be a canary. Maybe, but it ain't. It's only just a frog.
So it is. Well, what's he good for?
He's good enough for one thing. I should judge he can outjump any frog in Calaveras County.
Well, I don't see no points about that frog's better than any other frog.
Maybe you don't. Maybe you understand frogs and maybe you don't understand them. Anyways, I've got my opinion, and I'll risk $40 so you can outjump any frog in Calaveras County.
Well, I'm only a stranger here, and I ain't got no frog. But if I had a frog, I'd betcha.
That's all right. If you'll watch my frog a minute, I'll go and get you a frog.
You hungry frog?
Here's a frog for you, fella. Now, if you're ready, put your money here and let's begin. On the count of 3. 1, 2, 3, jump! Come on, Daniel. Hop! What the darnation's wrong with you?
Well, I told you that frog ain't any better than any other frog. Thanks for the smackers.
I do wonder what in the nation that frog been out for. I wonder if there ain't something the matter with him. He appears to look mighty lumpy somehow. Well, blame my cats if you don't weigh 30 pounds. What the? Well, Peter Watts dropped down my back and called me a polecat. Something stinks. I've been gypped.
And then he seen how it was, and he was the maddest man. He took out after that fella, but he never catched him.
Never catch him.
And
Alright, now you have seen the celebrated jumping frog of Calaveras County, and as an educated audience, I want you to determine whether there's any correlation whatsoever with the Athenian and the frog from ancient Greece. An Athenian once fell in with a Boeotian who was sitting by the roadside looking at a frog. Seeing the other approach, the Boeotian said his was a remarkable frog and asked if he'd agree to start a contest of frogs on condition that he whose frog jumped farthest should receive a large sum of money. You can kind of feel the audience turning on me here, can't you? The Athenian replied he would if the other would fetch him a frog, because the lake was near. To this he agreed, and when he was gone, the Athenian took the frog and, opening its mouth, poured some stones into it. Boeotian soon returned with the other frog, and the contest began. Second frog first was pinched and jumped moderately. Then they pinched the Boeotian frog, and he gathered himself for a leap and used the utmost effort. But he could not move his body the least. So the Athenian departed with the money. When he was gone, the Boeotian, wondering what was the matter with the frog, lifted him up and examined him. And turning him upside down, the frog opened its mouth and vomited out the stones. Verdict.
No comparison whatsoever.
You're a wonderful human being. You're now an honorary ballot for saying that particular remark. Yeah, guilty as hell. Well, when this Professor Van Dyke showed me the evidence, I told him we live in a most remarkable world where the same set of events could happen in ancient Greece and 19th century Calaveras County, California. Boy, they ain't buying any of that. As a matter of fact, I always tell that Johnson Feller students, if they get caught plagiarizing, they better have a damn better story than that one. And I hail from a family of storytellers. And that Johnson Feller, he really had a set of storytellers. There was Wildcat Jerry Ballard, one of the great storytellers of all time. In our midst, the legendary Hamburger Ballard, who can make you laugh and you try to repeat it and it ain't funny. Has that method of telling a story. Now, I don't claim to be a great storyteller, but I claim to know how a story ought to be told, having been in the vicinity of the great storytellers like Artemus Ward, Hopkins Goodsmith, the great Toastmaster William Dean Howes. And they say there are three types of stories: the comic, the witty, and the humorous. Now, the comic is British, and the witty is French, so ain't some bitch can tell a witty story. Is there someone here from France? I would be sorry you were from France. But I'm sure attitudes from the Americans to the French have changed in the civilized 21st century. I had a lady from France in Punta Gorda, Florida, take me to task on that. It was fun. I gave her a shot. She was fine. Told her it was wine. She said, that's one strong wine. 100 proof wine. Good stuff. But at any rate, I'm going to dispense with the witty, because anybody can tell one. I'm going to tell a comic and a humorous story. The comic is British and just depends upon the matter, what's ever in it. And the storyteller laughs all the way through it, thinking it's the funniest thing he ever heard. They were telling me, kind of compares him to old Red Skelton show. I laughed before he got to the punchline. But the humorous story is a pure American hamburger art form, spun out gravely. And the storyteller never acts like there's anything going on that's nothing but serious. And then he has to get the pause at the end correctly. Because if he doesn't, ruins the whole story. So I got to get the pause at the end of the humorous story. And sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. So we'll see how I do today. But first I'll tell a comic story. Yeah, I'm supposed to start laughing. I haven't started yet. And probably most of even my educated audience, you won't understand it because it's about war, and I'm sure you've done away with war by now. I always get that somber answer at that point. But it's called The Wounded Soldier. Once upon a time, there was a soldier who was retreating, kind of like me at the first sign of gunfire in the Civil War. I knew more about retreating than the man what invented it. This soldier, he's going to the rear and he comes upon a wounded soldier who looks up and says, "Help me! Help me! They shot off my leg!" Whereupon this generous son of Mars throws the wounded soldier over his shoulder and proceeds toward the rear. Well, there are cannonballs and musket balls, all kinds of balls. It was an all-male army back then. I always let that one kind of settle in. It kind of gets a good murmur going out of that. And one of them took the wounded soldier's head plumb off, unbeknownst the soldier carrying him. So he's proceeding to the rear, and he's getting real close to the rear, and he runs into an officer. Or an officer. One of those. What was interesting is the military students I tell this story to all agree, if you want to find an officer, it's still get as close to the back of the battle as you can get. So this officer comes up, says, "Forsooth." They talked real funny back in them days. "Forsooth, where are you going with that body?" "To the rear, sir. He's lost his leg." "His leg, you booby? He's lost his head." Whereupon the generous son of Mars laid the body down and looked upon it with great perplexity and said, "It is as you said, sir, but he said it was his leg." "His leg, he said." Told in the comic method. Only takes a minute or two to tell, and ain't worth the telling, obviously. But I've heard Artemis Ward spin that out in the humorous manner for an hour and a half. Be the funniest thing you ever heard. So now it's time for me to attempt a humorous story. And let's make sure I get the pause right at the end. That'll make or break it. And a good storyteller will get the audience involved. And I will do that. Hopefully in the middle of this tale. Anyone ever heard the story of the golden arm?
Golden what?
The golden arm. Yeah, yeah. Any of you who were here the last time I was here, you may have slept through it, but you did hear it. This was told to me by the great Negro ghost storyteller Hopkins Good Smith up on the platform. And I'm going to try and recreate it in the way he told it. I think I need another toast. The show gets better after second toast. It is better to keep one's mouth shut and appear stupid Then to open it and remove all doubt. I did that. Somebody said, we're at an Elvis concert. Who the hell's this Elvis fella they're talking about? Once upon a time, there was a monstrous mean man. Monstrous he was. And he lived way out in the prairie, alone by himself, he did. Except he had a wife. And by and by she died. So he just buried her. Just buried her. On back home. That night he's under the covers. Now here's a storyteller. You open your eyes and you look determined. Because at that moment he remembered she had a solid gold on. Solid gold from the shoulder down she did. And now he looked determined. Because he's got to have that golden arm. So he throws the covers away. And he grabs his shovel. He grabs his lantern. And he goes out through the prairie. And that ain't easy after a couple of those. Through the prairie. And he's battling the wind and the snow, and he finally gets, and he starts a digging. Now here's a storyteller. You take some time. Show him you're really digging. Do something stupid. Tripped over that cord, we'd have really laughed, wouldn't we? And he gets that golden arm. And now he's starting out through the snow and through the wind. And pretty soon, they did talk funny back in the days, didn't they? He heard it. Now here's a storyteller. You look up and you look startled. Because he's hearing the sing-song sound of the wind. And if there is one thing Florida and Kentucky have in common, it's they know about wind. Making it, breaking it. So if you would, help the storyteller out by putting your hands together and making the sing-song sound of the wind by going... Oh my land! Oh my land! Oh my land! And then he heard it. Above the wind, he heard it. The voice. Who's got my golden arm? Oh my leg, so scared he drops the lamp, he drops the shovel. He's still got that golden arm. And he's all scared and he's running around and he's getting through the snow. And then he heard the wind again. Oh, that's a great wind. That's a great wind. Who's got my golden arm? Oh, my land, he's so scared, he's running up. And he gets in, runs into his house, he runs. That's pretty good for 179, isn't it? Okay. Runs up there. And he gets under the covers, he's a-shaking and a-shivering. A shivering and a-shaking. And then he hears footsteps. Oh, my land, it's on the porch. It's on coming inside. It's a standing by the bed. Who's got my golden arm? Oh my! Now you have your audience working to a tumultuous uproar, and you let the excitement. And you let the excitement build to a crescendo, and you get them where they're eating out of the palm of your hand. And then you pause. You stop. And you let that excitement build up. And then you stare at something. if you got the pause right, she'll fetch a dear little yelp and turn 8 shades of red. Well, we got part of that. And come out of her shoes. And you must get the pause right, and you will find it the most perplexing and confounding thing you ever will try to do. But ladies and gentlemen, that's how you tell a story. Now, some of you may remember that I was a writer. Never worked a day in my life. Actually, I did because I was a steamboat pilot. But I wrote what I knew, and I first started writing for newspapers. And even after I got famous, I wrote for magazines. And one of my favorites was this magazine that asked me to go to the Holy Land and write an article. Well, they didn't actually ask me to go to the Holy Land. They just asked me to write an article on the Holy Land. I think they were scared if I win, it would just all fall in. It's a man of my countenance there. But Libby'd always wanted to go, and I figured she'd balance me out. Being a wonderful lady that she was. So I said, well, I'll write it, but I got to go. You got to pay for me to go. So they did. And they booked me passage on a boat that went across the Sea of Galilee. And it tossed and it turned and it tossed and it turned. And we both got so sick and I hadn't even been drinking. But it was a horrible boat ride. I come out of there, off that boat, and there's one of them reporter fellers. I think it was you. Where were you in 1892? I was not. Okay. You knew it was him. And asked me what I thought of the boat ride. I said, I see why Christ walked. Told you you'd laugh at a religious joke before it was all said and done. Told you. But yeah, they used to ask me to pontificate on my job as a writer. It was a great job. And always remember your audience. When I wrote Tom Sawyer, Prince and the Pauper, Huckleberry Finn, all of those novels that seem to still have some relevance to, I wrote for 2 audiences. Children and anyone who'd ever been a child. And when those people would say, well, how do you get a book sold? I say, get somebody to ban the damn thing. I mentioned earlier in the show, got to do this in North Carolina. Did a tour, East Carolina State University, a couple of other places a few years ago. And got to thank North Carolina for something it did, which was try to ban a book of mine. I think it was early 90s, this PTA, P-T-A, decided to ban The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn because they said it had the worst word in the history of the English language in it 276 times, so I reread it, and politicians only in there 3 times. But they wanted to ban the book. So the superintendent, not that any superintendent would bow to public. I'm sure that's changed. I was kind of feeling the audience out for that one. Superintendent got up and said, whoever would like to ban The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn from the curriculum because it's racist trash, please hold up their hands. And every hand went there. This public town hall meeting with all the alphabet, CBS, NBC, all of them alphabets. And he said, now everybody who has read the book, keep your hand up. Every hand went down because not one of them bastards had read the book. Because if they had, they would have known what the Kentucky Governor scholars knew. And Kentucky scholar is not an oxymoron. That's where you can catch your educated crowd. Now I will tell you, Advanced composition classes laugh because they know it's an oxymoron. And Comp 1 classes laugh because it has moron in it. So, at any rate. But I got to pontificate for the Kentucky Governor Scholars a few years ago, and 7 of the people in the hall were African American female who asked some most marvelous questions about the book. One of them commented it was the greatest novel of anti-slavery ever written. That's a smart girl. I do say so myself. I mean, that fellow Ernie Hemingway said all American literature started with one book, The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn. Of course, he's probably drunk at Sloppy Joe's in Key West, Florida when he said it. But at any rate. But she went on and talked about why it was such an anti-slavery book. Because she says the hero of the book's not Huckleberry Finn, it's Jim, the Negro slave. Huck's young, he learns everything from Jim. This is what I always tell students. And if that Johnson feller gives you a test, that's the first question. Who's the hero of the Adventures of Huckleberry Finn? And if you put Huck Finn, he gonna mark it. So, it's Jim the Negro slave because Jim sacrifices throughout the novel for the betterment of everybody but Jim. That's a hero. Kind of like your son in Afghanistan. Hero. Always want to sacrifice for someone else. Tremendous. Now, so she did ask, she goes, why didn't you call it, why didn't you name it after the hero? And I said, how many copies of Jim the Negro Slave do you think I'm going to sell in the 1800s? She said, you have a point. But on this particular occasion in North Carolina, I got to thank them. Because of all the publicity that was garnered from that town hall meeting. Remember historically, from the time the great state of North Carolina was founded until the early 90s, the best-selling book every year was the Bible. But not that year. It was The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn. Want to get a book sold? Get somebody to ban the damn thing. Happened in my lifetime. I was sitting on my porch in Hartford, Connecticut. I was sitting with the lady you may have heard of. I think she wrote a novel or two called Harriet Beecher Stowe. You imagine the conversations we had as she sipped her tea and I sipped my tea. But they sent one of them reporter fellers out because the mayor and the head librarian, no offense, Mike, banned my book, The Diary of Adam and Eve, from the library because it was pornographic. Now, it didn't have anything to do with my writing, which kind of disappointed me. But my illustrator left nothing to the imagination about what Adam and Eve were not wearing in the Garden of Eden. So they banned the book. They sent her to Hartford Current, I think still in operation. Did you work for them back then, didn't you? They came out and asked me what I thought. And I said, I'm not going to give you a quote right now. I said, I was kind of still mad about this thing that happened a couple of years before. When I read the newspaper headline that says, world's most famous man dies, and I wanted to see what Kipling died of. And it was me. Well, hell, I took inventory. I thought I was still around, but it was in the newspaper. It had to be true. But I wrote one of them letters to the editor. I'm sure they don't exist anymore, telling them reports of my death were greatly exaggerated. Now that played well in Bloomfield and New Haven, and it just bombed. Even the cricket didn't even chirp on that. Sad job. Must be wearing my audience out. We're getting close to the end. But at any rate, 6 months later, I sent one of them letters to the editor, thanking the mayor of Hartford and the head librarian for banning The Diary of Adam and Eve from the only place you could get it for free. 25,000 copies sold in the greater Hartford area. You want to get a book sold? Get somebody to ban the damn thing. Now I've probably pontificated enough, and we'll get here toward the end. But did have talking about my legacy. There were three great writers. They considered the triad, the trio of the great writers of the 19th century. And they said, those literary experts of the day said only one would stand the test of time. There was Charles Dickens, Mark Twain, and Anthony Trollope.
Who?
And that's the answer to that particular question. One of the most educated people in here. Everybody knows who the hell Anthony Trollope is, but he was the one they said would stand the test of time. And I am here to tell you, there's a reason. Because if you are ever having trouble sleeping, get out his Barchester series, start on page 1, and if you get to page 2, you're an intellectual. But Charles Dickens and I, we were just little trivial people writing about children. But you got to understand old Charlie. He couldn't write in England in the 19th century that the government treated its kids like trash. But he could write Oliver Twist and prove it. He couldn't attack the rich and greedy. I'm sure you've done away with them, 2%, in the civilized 21st century. But he could write A Christmas Carol, which has been done to Ebenezer Scrooge's dad. And of course I wrote Huck Finn, Tom Sawyer, Prince and the Pauper, Connecticut Yankee, King Arthur's Court, all those things. I had this one, speaking of my legacy, I had this one feller, he was a journalist feller, and he told me after my show, he said, I want to be a writer. I said, well, write what you know. He said, don't know nothing.
No, dear.
I said, well, what do you want to know? He says, well, I've always been interested in the great Northwest and Alaska, Yukon. I said, well, get your posterior up there. I don't think I use posterior. How'd that Jack London feller do anyway? Yeah, I know. Call the Wild, Sea Wolf, White Fang. They say that Disney feller made a lot of money off him. White Fang 2, White Fang 117, got no fangs left. And made quite a bit of money off me. Even that Martin Lawrence feller did a version of Connecticut Yankee and King Arthur's Court. So we have an enduring legacy that we can stand on. I have some magazines here. This is from 2008, calling my mind dangerous and that I am still relevant. That's a sad thing. Then there's 2010, Secrets, Lies, and the American Writer. How right I actually was. About damn time they figured that out. And then just this year, a full bio of me by Time Magazine. Not too bad. I also wanted to promote a Nelson County writer here. There's a feller from south of the river named Fenton Johnson. And he has the cover of the April edition of Harper's Magazine.
Good for him.
And it's called Going It Alone, Fenton Johnson on the Dignity and Challenge of Solitude. And I will tell you, you know how them newspaper people say to write for an 8th grade level? You want your vocabulary improved? Read the first paragraph of his and it'll go up 3%. But I want you to keep Fenton in your thoughts. He's battling cancer. Just finished his 30th radiation treatment. And doing well. But we keep him, we writers keep each other in our thoughts. But there's the magazine. But Michael, do you fellers have this particular magazine? This is an expensive magazine, so I don't know how much you got.
I'm not sure if they have Harper's.
On that, I'm sure Ms. Green will donate that. But yeah, we've got all kinds of, and of course I told you about Hemingway, and then there's this feller Willie Nelson. The Johnson feller got to sit down with him and talk writing for about half an hour a few years ago, and asked him if he had any advice for his young writers. And he says, tell them old Twain had it right. Write what you know. So that's the advice for you today. If you want to be a writer, write what you know. If you don't know nothing, find out. And then write about it. That's what I did. I experienced. even the Holy Land and the Sea of Galilee. And then there was this one other that says he does all his writing inspired by me. A feller named Jimmy Buffett. And he actually wrote a song based on my book, Following the Equator. We're going to play as part of the finale in a minute or two. But he took the line, be good and you will be lonesome. Be lonesome and you will be free. Live a lie and you'll live to regret it. That's what living is to me. And he took that, built a song around it. We're going to play that as part of the finale in just a little bit. But I wanted to brag on that Buffett feller because he did something I have always wanted someone to do for me. He named me as a character, continuing character, in his book, Tales from Margaritaville, which was on the New York Times bestseller list for a couple of years. I mean, that Buffett feller is still the only person that's had bestseller fiction, nonfiction, children's book, and a platinum CD at the same time. That's a writer. But he named the horse, continuing character, Mr. Twain. Love that. It's the first time that I've had the whole horse. And the last time. All right. Well, Mr. Michael, we'll have what we'll do is we're going to play the only known footage of me. I told you Edison wanted to shoot me. Told him stand in line, and then he shot this film. And we're going to play this Buffett song in the background. That's what living is to me. Then I'll take questions, and then we'll finish up with a toast I have been doing now for 24 years, since the late Charmaine Allman Mosby embarrassed a young college student by making him perform. So, Mr. Michael, take it away.
Sing.
Oh, by the way, I want to show you how athletic I was. Now, they say, I was told that smoking and drinking, all that smoking and drinking I do would cut 10 years off my life. I told them the last 10 years were overrated. But I'm going to show you how great an athlete I was. This is my home in Stormfield, Connecticut. Be good. See, I'm just walking and smoking, just carrying on. You know, nice white suit. Look how big that house is. Don't you notice how big that house is? Olivia wanted a big house, so guess what? We had a big house. I'm just kind of luring you in, smoking away. When I get out of sight, I want you to see just how quickly I come around that big house. Faster than Jim Ballard in his prime, right? And you will be lost. Now the lyrics that I show is daughters, Susie and Clara. Of course, Jean outlived them all and donated my writings to Cal Berkeley, providing they wouldn't publish until 2010. I think they were the only school that would agree to do it. I had one son, Langdon. He died Now, in Bloomfield, and I know you won't be surprised at this, they were making fun of the middle of the lady's hat pin. You'll see in a minute, because they said, well, we can use that for a lethal weapon. The story is
Good grief.
I've seen knives smaller than that.
my train of thought is loosely bound. I guess it's time to mark this down. Be good, and you will be lonesome. Be lonesome, and you will be free. Live a lie, and you will live to regret it. That's what living is to me. That's what living is to me. That's what living is to me.
All right. Are there, before we have our final toast, are there any questions? I don't have to have the answers. And I figured Jim would have at least one question I couldn't answer, so let's go with it, Jim.
Did you ever have any extended time in Kentucky at any sporting event?
Let's don't talk about it. They say if I told you I remembered my time in Kentucky, it'd be a lie. This is really good stuff. It is my drink of choice. And I support a lot of retirement funds. You know, speaking of that, someone asked me what my favorite dessert was. Besides, I said key lime pie is heaven's dessert. And if they ain't got it, I'm going somewhere else. Of course, you know, I always say you go to heaven for the climate, hell for the company. Any other good questions? I think one of the best questions I ever got that really stumped me was I was doing a show in Port Charlotte, and the average age of that audience was about 179. And I would throw out a line and they would end it. So they were pretty good. This one fellow, he's wanting to stump me, and he did a good job. He said, "What was your relationship with Harriet Beecher Stowe?" And at the time, I didn't know. I couldn't remember that far back. That was but my answer was a good one, and you appreciate it. Being a man of letters, you people of letters appreciate this. I said, my relationship with Harriet was somewhere in between my love for living and my feelings about James Fenimore Cooper. Because she had to be in the middle somewhere. Because I once was quoted to a journalist as saying, I wish Fenimore Cooper's parents had never met. Published his literary offenses. And you may wonder if I ever got the pause right, because I didn't get the pause right today. But thank you for playing. You at least turned red for me, so I appreciate that. But I didn't get it right in New Haven yesterday. I guess I needed to be armed, because that little boy looked at me like, bring it on. But I was doing this show for the Dominican congregation at St. Catherine College a number of years ago. And I was really worried because, first of all, the Dominican congregation at that time's average age was 72. And I'm figuring I'd jump at somebody and they keel over. You know, I know I'm going to hell, but I didn't want it for being killed none. But they opened it up for the student body, and one of the students brought her 6-year-old daughter. Thank God, literally, on that one. And I leaped at her with I had my paws just right, and she went, ah! And kicked her shoe off and hit me right in the head. And I thought that was pretty good. But then on Monday, the student told Mr. Johnson to give Mr. Twain a message. Said, you got the pause right. My daughter peed in her pants. Then there were now some of you know what it's like to deal with the good sisters, and I tell you, some of the most marvelous people I have ever known are nuns. I say that morning dinner. But at any rate, have you ever seen that finger that they use? I saw it after the performance at St. Catherine College. From two nuns, Sister Jean Marie Callahan, President Emeritus, one of those lovely ladies that ever walked, little Irish nun, about this tall. And then the lady we affectionately called the big nun. Sister Marina Gibbons, Vice President, Academic Dean, 78-year-old PhD from Boston College. And they accosted me after the show with complaints. And they had that finger. Not the one you see on I-65. This And Sister Jean Marie goes, when you do the show here next year, and you will do the show here next year, you will light the cigar. It's illegal, sister. You won't care. And I got the last, Mark Twain always got the last two words in. Every woman he ever dealt with. Yes, ma'am. Served him well. Well, one done down, one to go. Sister Marina Gibbons. When you do the show here next year, and you will do the show here again next year, you will bring enough bourbon and shot glasses for the Dominican congregation. Now, this is a problem. I'll never forget Sister Ann Frederick, saying, yeah, you need to bring the bourbon. We can't have sex, so we got to drink. But that's a problem. Trying to have enough bourbon and shot glasses? So I called that Johnson feller's boyhood friend, Freddie Booker Knowles. He said, call Dad. He'll take care of it. So I called Booker, and you know, there were two ways to get Booker Knowles' opinion. Ask for it or wait for it. What do you need? Didn't need a phone. I apprised him of my dilemma, and he says, call me the week before the show. So I did. And the day of the show, up the St. Catherine driveway comes a Jim Beam truck loaded with enough bourbon and shot glasses for the Dominican congregation. It was one of my best shows ever, I think. Kind of like when I was in Kentucky. They tell me I did a good show. Don't drink with nuns. Really bad move. Okay, any questions before the final toast? Yes, ma'am.
How and where did you meet Olivia?
Oh, she was such a darling, and she was so rich, and I was so poor. And her dad, like me, I would say eventually, but I don't even think eventually. You know, I was pontificating, and I was full of myself, and she thought I was funny. And I was able to charm her. See, if people don't know, I may have had a little Ballard blood in me somewhere along the line, because I was able to charm that lady who was definitely the greatest influence on my life. And when she died, I was never the same. Never. I was bitter at the world. I was bitter at God when she passed away. But I courted her, and I won her over. And I traveled the world to make sure she was not in debt and she had everything she wanted. We had houses in Hartford and Elmira, New York, and all over the place. And I wanted her happy. And I was actually singing to her when she passed away. Kind of a sweet story until you hear me sing. That's probably because she wanted to go. Any other great questions? As I said, I come from a great family of storytellers. Johnson feller does too, and a Johnson feller asked me to do a toast to a couple of them who have passed. Lost so many out of his family over the years, including his brother Charlie, who could spin a tale and laugh and get everybody to laugh. Mention Wildcat Jerry Ballard. Hard work, clean living Bert Ballard. See, it still gets a laugh. Of course, Ed and Ballard Johnson, Ed Bell Johnson Sr. What a wonderful, wonderful group of people that they were. But we have patriarch here of the Ballard clan. Just turned 80. Let's give him a hand. I want to thank Aaron Johnson, who was playing Susie Clemens, playing Becky Thatcher. My nephew Michael, who told me I was going to do the show.
You won't say anything about Barbara.
My niece Veronica, who is the official photographer of the Mark Twain Show. My godmother, Marilyn Ballard, is here. And you give me hell about this a while ago. Well, I'm going to tell you, there's to blame right there. The best cook in all of the world, St. Jane Greenwell. I was here when I got here on Wednesday. But I do thank you all. Thank you all for coming. And I have given the same toast for 24 years since Charmaine Allman Mosby, who just passed this last October, told me I was going to do an hour and 15 minutes or we were going to have a final exam. I performed what you saw tonight, with the exception of the Lego, was pretty similar to what I did 24 years ago. And you have those eyes looking at you like those sets of eyes that didn't want a final. But this one is how we should live our life. Let us endeavor so as to live that when we die, even the undertaker is sorry. For anybody who wants to talk, I got a display of Twain memorabilia up here. Feel free to mingle. Michael will tell us, you know, he has a line that he'll tell us a little later. He says he got it from New Haven. You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. You heard that line before.